All right, welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, want to welcome everyone. To, one second. Yeah, I want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, I want to welcome everyone to this Q&A. The question came in. We'll see where this goes. As usual, question was, let's say a Jew has bad memory. Understanding, let's say, is very poor. We're not going to say they're mentally challenged. That would be a whole different thing. Well, let's say a person got a bad memory, tries his best to learn, and he can't remember. Can't remember what he learned. Is he going to be punished for not knowing what to do? Meaning not knowing what's permitted, what's forbidden, and making mistakes. Is he going to be punished? All right, that was the question. Now, our obligation in this world, we mentioned many times, Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, and he mentions in Path of Justice, well, we are here to toil. We are here to work hard. That's our job. And it might not be easy. We might struggle. We might make mistakes. And we're going to pay for making mistakes. Now, not everyone obviously granted, a good memory. Memory is something I think, it has to be worked on. I don't think there's any question about that. You got to review. You certainly have to review what you learn. If you don't do that, you'll certainly forget. The Rabbi Chaim of blessed memory says in his introduction to the laws of Shabbos, he says if you don't constantly review, he says you will transgress. Right? It's not a curse per se, right? But the fact, you don't review what you have to do, you're going to pay the price. You will transgress. Now, if a person has a poor memory or his understanding is poor, now we'd have to define what it means their understanding is poor. We're not talking about a case where somebody is mentally challenged. If they're mentally challenged, God's not going to expect anything of them. Right? You have to remember, God made them mentally challenged. Why? Now, it's not the sin of the person. It can't be the sin of the person. Why? Because the person's not liable until they're over the age of 13. Right? Or 12 for a girl, 13 for a boy, up until the age of 20. So if a person, God forbid, a child is born mentally challenged, not the child's fault. So something else going on. What's going on? We mentioned many times. It has to do with their soul. And what their soul has to go through. Right? It had nothing to do with punishments of the person. The soul was going through the punishment here. For whatever it did. Whatever it did previously. So you have somebody doesn't have a very high IQ, or let's say better, is mentally challenged. We're not talking about that. God's not going to expect them to learn, remember anything. They have an IQ of a 2-year-old, of a 5-year-old. So how much can they comprehend? You teach them what you can teach them. And whatever mitzvahs they can do, they can do. But the reality is they're probably exempt from all of them. Because they don't know what they're doing. In general. Now, we're not talking about somebody here who is mentally challenged. They may be weaker in learning. Could very well be. Maybe in this case, we'll say they have a learning disability. Right? That's what it sounds like. Can't remember what he learns. You got a learning disability. Now, it depends how severe the learning disability is. Right? If it's something where a person can't be taught, All right, the person's not, mentally challenged, he's just got some learning issues. Learning may be difficult. And even if it's difficult, it doesn't mean they're exempt. Everyone according to their level. If God feels this person has the ability to learn more and do more, and they don't, they're going to be held to a higher standard. That for sure. That 100% for sure. If they're not expecting, they're not expected to learn very much, it's because they're incapacitated. Learning disability, let's say. So again, in general, depends how bad it is. Depends how severe it is. If it's so severe, they're mentally challenged, different issue. If it's less severe, but they have difficulty learning, that doesn't mean they're exempt. Right? Let's make clear. It doesn't mean they're exempt. But everybody according to their level. If someone has the ability to learn and they make mistakes. They don't remember. Right? We're not going to say it's such a severe case, but let's say they don't review. They don't review what they learned. They're going to be held liable. For sure they're held liable. You can say, but it's not their fault. Well, whose fault is it? You want to tell me that, they're so mentally incapacitated. That's a different issue. If that would be the case, they're not going to be liable for that much. But if they have the ability to learn, and learning may come difficult, it's difficult for them. Doesn't mean they can't learn. Doesn't mean they can't do mitzvahs. But they make mistakes. They are going to pay. But again, how much are they going to pay? How much are they going to pay in the next one? They're going to pay the amount of how God sees fit. I.e., what are they capable of doing? What are they capable of learning? The question here is their understanding is very poor. The question is why? Is it because they just don't like to learn? Is it because they have difficulties in learning? And if they have difficulties in learning, doesn't mean they don't have to keep what they need to keep. If they can't be taught, might be a different issue. Might be exempt altogether. Right? But somebody will have a more difficult time, that's true, if they have difficulty understanding, if they have difficulty learning. That doesn't mean they're exempt. It just means they have more difficulty. And if a person doesn't learn, let's say they don't learn particularly well, or they have difficulty, it's going to be very hard for them. For a boy or for a girl. Because a lot of it has to do with scholastics and how well a person can learn, even by a girl. Right? They get a lot of homework, a lot of information. If a girl has it tough, it's tough. Right? For a guy, I think it's worse. Why? Because that's how we're measured. Whether people like it or not, the Jewish community's got to measure a person by how much they know. When it comes to Torah mitzvahs, when it comes to Talmud. You're going to say, but not everyone is cut out. Is cut out to learn. I mean, you have to make a living, obviously. But not everyone's cut out to learn. That's what people will say. But you got to give them an opportunity. So, what's the opportunity? What does that mean? So, a Levite, when did he serve in the temple? Seems to be a discrepancy. One verse it says that when they start serving the age of 25. Second verse tells me when they start learning 30. So what is it? Is 25 or 30? So Rashi explains the discrepancy like this. That what's the discrepancy of 5 years? 5 years means you give the person the opportunity to sit and learn and see if they're going to become something, to see if the learning is really going to stick. Not talking about in their formative years, until high school, after high school, right? I'm talking after high school. Right? Give them 5 years. And if after 5 years they don't see fruits from their learning, then they're not going to make it learning. They'll learn on the side, whatever, they'll have fixed times for learning. But seemingly to become a big Rav, they're not going to. Why not? Because Rashi says, you give them 5 years to see. And if after 5 years they put in the efforts, maybe they put in a lot of effort, but they're not successful, or they're not so successful, let's say, then they're not going to be that successful. That's what Rashi says. So, some people say, come on, my kid's 18. Let him do something real with his life. Let him go to university. Might have an unbelievable grueling schedule. 2 mornings, 2 afternoons a week. Grueling schedule. Come to full-time learning day and night. It's like, but I already learned. But this is, you have to understand. When does a Jewish kid start learning Mishnah when he's in 4th grade? Starts learning Gemara in 5th grade. 10, 11 years old. Right? So he's going to go to Yeshiva Katana when he's 13, 14. Go to Yeshiva Gedola when he's 17, about 16, 17. So then he's really learning how to learn. He's being taught how to learn. Now, at that point, you don't cut him off and say, it's got to go to university. What are we going to do? It's got to go to university. That's when you give him the opportunity. That's when you give him the opportunity to see what's going to be. And I would agree. Not everyone's cut out to sit and learn all day. It's just some people have it, some people don't. And the person doesn't, they can't do it or whatever. So they'll work. They'll have to work. Everyone eventually is going to have to work. Do something, put bread on the table. But you got to give him an opportunity. Just because they learned for, till he was 18, that's not enough of an opportunity. He's always starting to develop. So if he's got greater potential, that's one thing. Then he's going to be held responsible for that level of greater potential. Not in the future where he's holding now. And if at that level, whatever level the person's on, if he should be at a higher level, and he's wasting time, this and that, and he makes mistakes, that's a much more severe punishment. If he's limited in knowledge, he's limited in learning, you're not going to have the same obligation. Not at all. Why not? Because he wasn't given certain capability. Now, he can work on it. It depends. It depends how hard a person works, what the heavenly help is. God helps him. But someone who has difficulty in learning, or they're not interested so much in learning, let's say. So it's harder for them. Now, does that mean they can't make something out of themselves? No, it doesn't mean that. Famous story with Rabbi Chaim Kanievsky of blessed memory. Learning for him wasn't going when he was younger. Learning so much in depth, and going at a snail's pace. It wasn't going. So his father, the disciple, who was, one of the Torah giants of that generation, told him, or basically advised him, start learning a lot quicker. Go through it, but learn it at a quicker pace. And he did that, and that went for him. And then he, became the Torah giant of the generation. But just because, again, this is a little bit tricky here. Just because it doesn't go for a person doesn't mean he's not cut out for it. It's 2 different things. It may be hard for a person, true. I don't think anyone, finds it unbelievably easy. You got to work. It's hard work. It's like no other discipline. They mentioned last week in Pirkei Avos. The Torah is as long as the earth, it's as wide as the sea. The problem is we live in an instantaneous generation. I want to know it now. I want to know what it means, this, that. It's complicated. You got to sit down. You got to sift through it. You got to see what they agree, they disagree, commentators, this, that. It's taxing on the mind. Not everyone's cut out for it. People have to learn, no question. Men have to be trained in it. They have to know how to learn. Right? But it's a very tricky thing here. Because then the question's going to be, well, how do I know I'm not cut out for it? But I know it's not going well. And it's not easy. Well, it's not supposed to be. That's first thing. It's not supposed to be easy. Second thing is, someone would ask, or someone may ask, well, isn't that the evil inclination? Couldn't that be the evil inclination? Just telling you it's too hard and you can't do it. And okay, so you learn a little bit here, a little bit there. That could definitely be part of the evil inclination. Why? Because really, the evil inclination knows this person has all the ability. It's just he's lazy, or he's got bad influences, or whatever. So the evil inclination comes and tries to slaughter him. Say, nah, come on, you can't do it. It's too hard. The grass is greener somewhere else. So you're gonna say, very good. This applies to Jews and learning. What does that do with non-Jews? It's a good question. What does that do with non-Jews over here? Anyone's been in the process of conversion as a JIT obviously knows it's not easy. And obviously, they've made mistakes along the way, most likely. Some more, some less. And when they make mistakes, they find out the mistakes they made could have been bad mistakes, could have been not so bad mistakes. What does the evil inclination tell you? The evil inclination will tell you you'll never be accepted by the Jews. You'll never get it right. It's too hard, and it's hard to move, and it's this, a million different things. The evil inclination will come and absolutely slaughter you. And some people, Kaufman's language, they will wilt. It's too hard. It's a lot of pressure. And you're by yourself in the sticks, in the boonies, as we would say in Boston. In the boondocks. No one's watching me anyway. But I want to get it right. I want to do things right. And woe to a person, forget OCD, they're a perfectionist. Anything they've done, they've been successful. They might have struggled, whatever, but, they overcame this, overcame that, other things. I'm talking scholastically. Not everyone's the best student, okay? But let's say someone has success in many other things, many other fields. Torah does not go the same. It's not just I plug in a formula and it comes out. Doesn't work that way. Torah, as we understand, very complex. Extremely complex. Here I was, a junior in college, university. You want to read Hebrew, come to learning yeshiva, had to start from the beginning, learning Mishnah, then started learning Gemara, learned Mishnah for a while. Could read Hebrew, didn't understand anything. Start from scratch, very humbling experience. You start from scratch, and sometimes, you're going up, then you sort of level off. Maybe you go up a little bit more, then you level up, maybe you go down, you go up. Learning is not easy. It's like no other discipline. Because we have to train ourselves, or let's say better, be trained by others to understand Talmudic logic. Because logic according to the Torah is not our logic. Now, the laws of damages, remember, Gemara says, anyone who wants to be wise, you learn the laws of damages. And I remember once learning a certain thing and could make heads or tails what's going on. So that's one of my rabbi's question. If it's the closest thing that we understand, the laws of damages, why is it not going in? It's business, right? It's damaging. What should be so hard over here? Because the rabbi told me very simple. You're missing one crucial element. What's the one crucial element? It's God-given. And even though it's the closest thing to our understanding, it's still God-given. It's a whole different element. It's a whole different way to think, a whole different way to learn. Now, normally, it comes to almost any other discipline. Almost any other discipline. A person doesn't necessarily need to learn with someone else. Maybe to study, you got a test, you want to go over certain things. It's probably better, I would say, to learn with someone else. Why? In Torah, it's crucial. Because if you're looking at a text, what's the problem? Problem is you see it one way. Any text, go through Chumash, right? You go through Tanakh, you go through the prophets or the writings, and you look at what it says. So, person can read Hebrew, they look at the translation, say, okay, but what does this mean exactly? Even if it's a good translation, what does it mean? It could mean a lot of things. But if you have other knowledge, it gets more complicated. If the knowledge is good. Well, but what's the issue? Not saying the person can't necessarily learn on their own. But what's the issue? You look at the text in one way. Someone else will look at the text in a different way. You're going to say, okay, what's the point of that? The point is to broaden a person's horizon. Because you have a bias. For whatever reason. You have a bias telling you this is what the text says. This is what the ramifications are. And someone says it can't be true. Why can't it be true? Because I have another text says somewhere else. Or that's not what Rashi says. Or that's not what one of the commentaries explain. And then you have to build up why you say what you say. Right? That's give and take. And it can get heated. Anyone who's ever seen two people learn, it can get heated. Each one trying to prove their point. Obviously not showmanship, not upmanship. We're trying to prove what they're saying is true. Not just to put someone else down. But they want to get to the truth of the text. Makes perfect sense. Now, if a person reaches a certain level, then they can learn on their own. But the rabbis tell us better not to. Because again, we have our own bias. And when a person has their own bias, when we have our own bias, we look at the text in one way. Someone else may not see the same way. So you argue back and forth. Who's right? It's about getting to the truth, not about putting someone else down because you want to make yourself look good. But I don't want to digress it. I don't want to digress here. The point of the question was that it's going to depend on the person's level. If he can't remember because he never reviews, that's his own fault. God's not going to have mercy on that. But if he can't remember, he's got a bad memory. And he keeps trying and trying and trying, and he doesn't have heavenly help over here. He's still going to be able to Bible. He still has to know what he's supposed to do. And if he can't learn on his own, he's got a bad memory, he's got to get someone to teach him. Right? But in this case, it's going to depend on the person's level of knowledge. In other words, where are they holding? Is it just they don't want to review, and therefore they forget a lot of things? Or does learning in general go difficult for them? Not that they're mentally challenged, but it goes difficult for them. Okay. But even if it's difficult at their level, wherever they're holding, they still have to know what to do. So the answer is, if they don't know what to do, they got to go ask someone. And if they're not going to be the world's greatest scholar, they still have to know how to keep Shabbos. They still have to know how to keep the holiday. They still have to know what to do. If they're anything below that, i.e. mentally challenged or close to that or whatever, then the obligations are totally different. Totally different. The obligation is, wherever they're holding, whatever the source of their soul is, God's going to judge them. So if they have the ability to learn more and they don't, because they're just lazy, they say, I got a bad memory and I can't do it or whatever, and it's a work of the evil inclination, they're going to be liable, tremendously liable. If there are other things going on, they'll be less liable. It depends. Can't really answer, I can only answer in generalities. You have to see a specific case of what a person knows or where they're holding or, and all of that. That's how I would answer. They're not going to not get punished at all unless they're mentally challenged. If they're doing it to themselves, of course they're going to get punished. But a person can have learning, let's just say like this. A person can have learning disabilities. They can definitely have learning disabilities. That doesn't mean they don't have to know how to keep Shabbos. Doesn't mean that. It may be very hard for them. So what they're obligated to learn and how to learn is going to be different than other people. Totally going to be different. But if it's just laziness, different issue. Again, depends on the case. Somebody here asks, how do Orthodox Jews view reform? Now, let's make one thing clear. If they're Jewish, they're Jews. If they've intermarried, they lose their status of being Jewish. Certain things a person can do to lose their status to be a Jew. Meaning, they desecrate Shabbos in public. Doesn't matter, they know about it, they don't know about it. Right? No matter what they know or they don't know. They have the status of a non-Jew for many things, unless they repent, unless they do tshuva. If they touch a Jew's wine, it hasn't been cooked, pasteurized, can't drink it. Can't answer amen to their blessing. Can't call them to the Torah. Many things. Many things that their status will change. Now, reform over here, they started out, their objective was very clear. Their objective was to change Judaism. Make it more modern. And change it, whatever they didn't like, they took out, replaced, left it out, whatever. Now, my Rebbe would hold that because somebody associates with that movement, they have a certain status. They have a certain status. Why? Because their whole goal was to uproot Torah. That was their goal. Their goal was to uproot Torah. That's how they started. Now, the conservative movements, their goal wasn't to uproot Torah. Was to make it more modern for this generation, for the 20th century, 21st century. Their goal was not necessarily to uproot Torah. That ended up what happened. Maybe they're 10 years behind reform, maybe less. Right? But that wasn't their goal. Now, I would say that even if that's true, reform and conservative are not that much different. Both hold by patriarchal descent. both have, gay rabbis and accept gays, other things. Maybe in some conservative synagogues, it's more Hebrew in the service, maybe. Reform is mostly English, okay. But essentially, I wouldn't say they're radically different. Now, my Rebbe would disagree. And he would disagree very strongly and say there's a major difference how they started. Major difference. Conservative Jews and their rabbis are all heretics. They don't believe in God. If they do believe in God, it's minimal, whatever it is. It's certainly not about mitzvahs or some mitzvahs is about picking and choosing. So Reform will say, they started off in a totally different way. And their goal was to uproot, conservative was to preserve. Preserve what? Whatever they felt like preserving. To me, it doesn't make that big of a difference. Because essentially they're both holding the same. Some a little bit worse, some better. Doesn't matter. They're both in the same pot. Both in the same pot. But it is true. I'm not going to disagree here. It definitely is true how they started. Reform movement started, and their goal was to uproot Torah. Nothing talking. Nothing talking. So if they're Jewish, and the Reform will say about the Orthodox, they don't think we're Jewish. If their mother's Jewish, they're Jewish. If they desecrate Shabbos in public, they intermarry, much more serious prohibition. There's still repentance, but they take themselves out of the category of being Jewish. Reform, conservative, doesn't matter. So we're not saying they're not Jews. They look at us and we say, we're not Jewish. What they mean is, we don't think they're as Jewish as us. That's what they mean. Because, Orthodox Jews will say it's not Judaism. True. Because it really isn't. They're practicing whatever they want. That looks a little bit like Torah, but it's not. Because we don't pick and choose. Certainly like they do. The conservative movement at one point claimed to be a halachic movement. Right? Many years after I was there, they totally went off from that. In different things. So no one's going to claim they're halachic today. Either movement. Are people that belong to their synagogues, are they Jewish? If their mother's Jewish. But you said, what about desecrating Shabbos? And they have the status of a non-Jew. Technically, they're still Jewish. We're not saying they're totally not Jewish. There are certain things that they have the status as a non-Jew. A Jew desecrates Shabbos in public. He's got the status of a non-Jew for different things. If he intermarries, he cuts himself off spiritually. So there are certain repercussions. It doesn't necessarily mean they're not Jewish, technically speaking. Again, it's a technical thing. If their mother's Jewish, no matter what they do, technically. Again, we're not talking philosophically here. On a technical level, they're still Jewish. The way they look at it, you're telling me I'm not Jewish. Didn't say that. If your mother's Jewish, you're Jewish. But you do certain things, and philosophically it takes you out of being Jewish. That's a different issue. But we're not saying you're not Jewish. There's just ramifications for what you do, which nobody ever wants to hear. Right? So what they do is they dilute, they desecrate, they run down what real Judaism is. They make it, my language, as a travesty of a mockery of Hashem. That's how we view it. That's how it should be viewed. Now, someone going to put me down and say they Jews? Again, if their mother's Jewish, they're Jewish. They're totally Jewish. And if their mother's not Jewish, then they have to convert. They want to be Jewish. Father being Jewish doesn't mean anything, according to Jewish law. right? We disagree with people or groups or whatever that pick and choose. And someone there points out, you can't change Torah to suit yourself. It's not Torah made in my own mind, right? Everybody's got the same obligation as Jews. Everybody. That doesn't change. And they got no proof at all to say we have the ability to pick and choose. Who says? Bring me a source. Where the Torah, the commentary, somebody says I have the right to do whatever I want. Nobody says that. You want to be a Karaite? Only hold by the written law, not the oral law? That's not picking and choosing. That's saying we disagree with the rabbis. That's not picking and choosing. What other groups are there? You just have them. And Karaites haven't done anything in the world, in the last 100 years. Pretty much disappeared. Someone will tell me there are 50,000 Karaites in the world. Okay. Let's say if that's true. So, not doing anything. Not doing anything for the world. Not like their communities are flourishing. They got all these books and they got all these responses that, they're passing down the next generation. I haven't heard too much about them. Pretty much they've died out. No matter what their numbers are, they died out. Pretty much. But the point is, it's bad enough you want to pick and choose. And say, I don't like this doesn't suit me, whatever. It's a whole nother thing, to belong to a movement, to a group, that their whole goal was 100% to uproot Torah. That's a whole different thing. That's a more severe thing. And that I would agree. They were different than the conservative movement, for sure. But I think deep down, really none of them believe in, they're all the same in many ways. Because someone identifies with that movement, are they holding by, the other movements? And what they do, more or less, are they that much different? Not much different. What they'll say is, I'm not Orthodox. That's what they'll say. I want to be part of this. It's a lot easier. So what? So now you got one movement that does a lot fewer mitzvahs than the other one. And both agree that they don't want to be Orthodox. Okay, but philosophically, I don't think most people in their own movement know what's going on. I don't know if they have any idea. I know, I studied by the conservative movement. I used to go back to my parents' synagogue, speak to people. They had no idea, what the Torah said, what they're obligated in. When they listen to the rabbi, they don't, it wasn't like, what the rabbinic assembly, the conservative movement said, in all the synagogues, they hold by it. Depends what your rabbi says, your synagogue says, and what they do, and this. That's what it is. It's all hodgepodge. Make it up as I go along. And the end result is it's a disaster, as we understand. But again, I would agree, if a person is part of a movement, the whole goal was to uproot Torah, yeah, that's significant. But I don't think the other movement's that far behind. Practically speaking, in belief. I don't think some are more traditional, less traditional, let's say in the conservative movement, but I don't think it makes that much of a difference. Maybe they're 5 to 10 years behind the Reform movement, maybe. I think that gap is closing. I think it's closing pretty quick. They might not have started out the same way, but today I don't think practically makes any difference. That's what I would say. So based on that, so Reform doesn't cure kosher and oral Torah. They do what they want. They don't care about oral Torah. They don't care what the rabbis say. They do what they want. Someone will tell you, you don't have to keep kosher. Now it's an old law, you don't have to keep it. Forget about waiting till we milk and meat. Nah, come on, that's ancient. Don't have to worry about that. Whatever floats their boat. Pretty much. They just don't like everything now. They're going to tell the congregants to keep kosher? I don't think so. Certainly not. They believe in oral law. You believe in the Talmud thing? No, I don't believe in that. I don't even know what it is. The story of someone, I don't know, the process of conversion, converted, or it was about tshuva, whatever the case is. He had to teach a Reform rabbi to put on tefillin. His Reform rabbi didn't even know how to put on tefillin. I'm pretty sad. That's how far it goes. Someone asked, are young children allowed milk after meats? Depends how young. The age of education is like 5 or 6. So a 5 or 6 year old, if they have meat, you should let them wait at least, I would say, like an hour before they have milk. If they're younger than that, technically they don't have to. You can just, wash out their mouth a little bit and they can go in between milk and meat. Depends how young. If they're older, if they're educational age, 5 or 6, then you have to make them wait. I would say an hour. They hit 7 or 8, make them wait a couple hours. They hit 10, make them wait 3 hours. By the time they hit 11 and 12, they should be waiting 6 hours. Right? In gradations. Obviously not all at once. Can they use electrical toys on Shabbos? Depends what age. If it's a younger child, doesn't know anything, 3 and younger, or less than 3, really. And let's say a 2-year-old picks up a toy that makes noise, you don't have to stop it. But if he already understands yes and no, then you should stop it. So you don't have, again, if they're underage, they pick up a toy that makes noise on Shabbos, an electrical toy, you don't have to take it away from them. If they understand yes and no, then you should put it away before Shabbos. But again, if they pick it up and they're underage, you don't have to stop it. Let's say, forget electronic. Let's say a 2-year-old picks up a rattle and starts shaking it. You don't have to tell them to stop necessarily. Listen, if they know yes and no, and say, it's Shabbos, you're not allowed to do that, then they're gonna run and still shake it. But you gotta be careful. Toys that make noise, they shouldn't be around. But again, listen, we're busy doing so many things. Even though Shabbos is later now. And, you forgot to either take out the batteries or to move the toy or whatever the case is. Child puts it up and starts going on. Picks it up and starts going on, making noise. Okay. I remember one of my grandkids picked something up. Whatever it was, started making noise. One of the other grandkids, hey, he's desecrating Shabbos. All right, he's, a year old. No desecration Shabbos by a 1-year-old. Right? So, okay, he did it. He shouldn't have done it. Try and move it or whatever, but he did it, okay? Is that desecration of Shabbos? Not desecration of Shabbos. He's a 1-year-old. He's a 1-year-old. So that you don't have to worry. Again, if he's educational age, then, some of these toys should be moved. They should be moved before Shabbos, if possible. If not, and he moved it and he made noise, okay. You're not gonna move it, throw it at him or whatever, scream at him. You just, say Shabbos, whatever, and next time you move it. It's what it's what you should do. You don't want to get in the habit of doing, stuff like that. Someone asks, how should I conduct myself amongst non-Torah keeping Jews? You treat them with respect. You don't have to, hammer them because they don't keep Shabbos or, whatever. You have to be respectful. No one today, certainly is going to take, or I shouldn't say nobody. A lot of people are not going to take deep mussar when if you see a secular Jew, go in his car on Shabbos and you're like outside, walking the synagogue. You don't sit there, run after him, scream Shabbos. They're not going to do anything. I mean, you have to make a protest to yourself. So Shabbos isn't light in your eyes, because if you just see someone desecrate Shabbos and you're the same person afterwards, certainly as a Jew, then it means Shabbos is not that important to you, as my Rebbe would say. Now, the reality is, we see a secular Jew desecrate Shabbos, we should scream, because it should bother us. That's what we should do. But that's not going to do anything. That's not going to do anything over here. You sit there and make a protest, yell and scream, they're going to hate Judaism more. Like, you're a fanatic, this and that. So instead, invite them for a meal for Shabbos. Do something positive, not negative. There's a lot of negativity in the world. A lot of negativity. And people will say, oh, they're this, they're that, they're the other. So why don't you try and do something to bring them close? Instead of just knocking them down. Negativity is easy to come by. Right? And there are things people have to be warned about. I agree. Someone's a heretic, you gotta warn people not to listen to them. Fine. Not everything has to be negative. People have to be inspired. We live in difficult times. There are a lot of terrible things going on in the world. We don't need further machlokes, further, hatred between Jews. Now, at the same time, we can't say, well, this is okay. That type of behavior is okay. Can't do that. Right? And someone says, well, you have to acknowledge this into marriage. No, I don't. Who says I have to? Makes you feel uncomfortable. That I don't do it, but I don't have an obligation. It's for the sake of peace of the family. No, it's not. Times you got to stick up for Torah. You got to call a spade. Not to rub it in their face. No. But if something comes up, you got to stand your ground. Again, secular Jews, not their father secular. They don't know anything. They have to be taught. And you say, I want to show them things, this, that, they don't want to listen. Okay. Can't bring the horse to drink. You do the best you can, and that's it. They want to drink, good. If they don't, their choice. Everyone's got a free choice. Right? But the question is, okay, they don't keep mitzvahs. So what? What does King David say? The reality is, King David says, I hate those that hate you, God, and I love those that love you. Now, does that mean I have to hammer them 24/7? Doesn't mean that. Now, some people may tell you that. And deep down, we should be giving them mussar. And, deep down, we should be doing this. Why? Because we want them to do tshuva. We want them to repent. It's in their best interest. We can say, but they're not going to listen. So who says just because they're not going to listen, I don't have an obligation to give rebuke? Someone asks, so while we're on this, is a person allowed to speak Lashon Hara against a non-Jew? Yeah, you are, technically. According to the laws of Lashon Hara. Get in a lot of trouble for this, but okay. You're allowed to. Rabbi Chaim says not a good thing to do. Technically speaking about a Jew, you're not allowed to. But a non-Jew, technically, I can run my mouth as much as I want. Much as I want. Rabbi Chaim says it's not a good thing to do. Why isn't it a good thing to do? Now you're going to say, well, it's a technicality. What's the technicality? Technicality is, I may end up speaking about a Jew. So therefore, it's better not to speak about a non-Jew. Unless you have a purpose. Now, idolatry, there's a mitzvah to make fun of it. So that I could run my mouth all day long making fun of it if I wanted to. To show it has no power. But even where it would be permissible, there are certain limitations. Right? Because the question is, let's say the person, I have a right to do such a thing. Right? The person's evil, caused me damage, this, that, the other thing. And you want to just speak about it. Well, there are 7 conditions people should know about speaking Lashon Hara. First of all, you have to witness it as if the thing itself. Not by hearsay. You have to have seen it firsthand. Not only that, you shouldn't conclude something, let's say theft, damage, anything else, unless you for sure know. Then you have to first approach the transgressor privately. Rebuke him with gentle language. So maybe he'll listen. Then the description of sin should not be exaggerated. You have to have pure intentions. And if it's going to cause the sinner to repent, warn the community to stay away from such an activity, and it can be achieved in another way, then I'm not allowed to speak Lashon Hara. And you shouldn't cause more damage than would be appropriate as determined by a court of Jewish law. 7 conditions. And the Rabbi Chaim says, even if you meet all 7 conditions, be very, very careful. Now, what would be the $1.5 million? See, I have to answer. What's the $1.5 million question? And that is, what if you're in therapy? Person in therapy, and someone did something against them, egregious. I ought to speak Lashon Hara about it. So that's the therapist going to take in and determine what type of therapy to do, this and that, based on what the person said. So that's all Lashon Hara. That's a benefit. That's definitely a benefit. Right? But in general, who says the person is allowed to say whatever they want? You can say, but the person's evil. True. Definitely true. Even a heretic. Someone who's a heretic. Would I be allowed to say whatever I want against them? Yeah. But I would still say, even a person speaks out against the heretic, you can't just do it because it's fun. Why are you doing it? To warn others. It has to have a benefit. A practical benefit over here. You're going to say, well, it makes me feel better. It's not a practical benefit per se. You want to say it over to yourself, it's one thing. Say it in front of others, it's a different issue. But a person's going to say, come on. Look what the person said. Look what the person did. Not denying that. No one's saying the person's guiltless. Not saying that at all. But you see, when a person speaks, it affects them. And it affects others. So if it affects a person in a negative way, even though it feels good to get out, it's not good. Now, even technically, in this case about a non-Jew, technically maybe we'd say it's okay that the Rabbi Chaim says. But the question is, should you do it? And he says, no. He says, you shouldn't. It's not good for you, even if it's permitted. Again, a person may just feel, I have to get this off my chest, and it affected me so bad. Okay. But who gives you the right just to spew off the mouth for no reason? But look what they did. So it's not an excuse. I'm not saying it's not painful. It's not an excuse. We may use it as an excuse. But see, then we get the lack of emunah issues. Lack of belief and faith in God. Why? Because if something happened to you, isn't it God wanted it to happen? Isn't he the one in charge? Isn't the other person the stick? And you say, but I didn't do it. The person did X, Y, and Z. I had no control. Different issue. That is a different issue. So then why did that happen? The answer is we don't know. The only answer is it had to be something with your soul. And what God wants your soul to go through now. So you're going to say, if that's the case, he's the one in control. So why are you talking? I'm talking to myself here as well. Why are you talking over here? You never right to say anything. God put it in front of you as what is a test? That's what it is. It's a test. It might be a hard test. But he doesn't want you to open your mouth over it. And if a person has difficulty, you gotta speak to someone about it. And that's all Lashon Hara. Because that has a benefit. Try and heal the person. We're going to say it happened over time and it was years and is it? Okay. We're not denying that. And it can be extremely painful. But again, what gives the right the person to spew off in the mouth for no reason? You say, I'm justified. There's no justification. You're just blowing off steam, making yourself feel better, and other people are going to sit there and take it in, and now you transgress 31 prohibitions in one shot. You can say, but look what the person did. I don't care what the person did. Doesn't matter what the person did. So it makes the test harder. I agree. Not a choir boy by any stretch. I 100% agree. Makes it a lot harder. And a person may be 100% justified. 100% justified. Rabbi Chaim says, you got seven reasons over here. 7 things you have to go through before you open your mouth. And he says, even if you go through all 7, you pass all 7, and now you have a right to say it, he said, you still shouldn't say it. Because that has a negative effect on you. You're going to say that's impossible. Not impossible. It's hard. I won't agree. I won't disagree. Definitely hard. Impossible? God doesn't put us through situations we can't handle. Right? At least, we got to believe that. But, it doesn't mean, let's call them a spade here. It doesn't mean the person wasn't hurt. It doesn't mean they weren't damaged. It doesn't mean they have the right to be angry. They don't have a right to be angry. They have every right plus multiply by infinity to be angry. 100% across the board, let's say. Rabbi Chaim still says you got 7 conditions to go through before you open your mouth. You got to know what the person did. He doesn't make any qualifications. He doesn't say this happened, that happened, the other thing happened. He's telling you in general, no matter how hard it is. That's not what I said. That's what he said. That's what we hold. Now, is that hard? Depending on what someone did to us, yeah. Not an easy thing. Definitely not an easy thing. But you got to be careful when you open your mouth, even if you're 100% justified. Someone asks, person yawns during the morning or nighttime prayers. If we say something wrong, words get messed up, mispronounced. Should we continue or go back? You got to go back. If you said the wrong word, you have to go back. Right? Those kind of mistakes, you have to go back. Can't skip words. In some prayers that are more significant, let's say the Shema, Shemona Esrei, yeah, you can't skip. For sure you can't skip. Other things, if you did, you forgot, whatever, okay. But really, you should go back to where you were. Should go back to where you were. Because you didn't say it right. You got to be careful. Even if a person's tired, still got to be careful. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah, this question I already dealt with. As no one, if you do the mitzvah purely because I want to go to heaven, not go to hell. Yeah, I spoke about that. Go to my last video. I spoke about that. Any other questions? All right. If there are no other questions, I'm going to sign out. I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, feel free. Find me on Facebook at Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. It'll be on Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wish everyone a good beginning of the day, middle of the day.